So hey, what's up everyone? I was asked by ISCA to do a video about color for caricatures. So if you're a beginner or intermediate, or you're the best artist in the world, if you're here to step up your game or refine your skills, turn your color from good to gold to shut up and take my money, then this video is for you. So we'll start off with the fundamentals. We're going to talk about materials, value, and texture. We're going to head over to the intermediate stuff, color theory and drawing skin tones. And then finally, the advanced stuff, experimenting with color, speedy color and economy of color, and some bonus stuff. And lastly, we'll talk briefly about coloring digitally. First, just a little bit of a backstory and my experience doing caricatures. I started in 2010 at SeaWorld, Orlando, Florida. I was 17, it was my first job, and I started out like we all start out. I started out horrible. And I would try to convince people to get black and white. Get black and white, please. Don't make me color anything, because it's going to turn out bad. But by watching my coworkers color, I started to improve little by little. I did that for 4 years on and off while I was going to college, where I was taking a lot of drawing and painting classes, like very fine art. But it gave me a lot of good foundation skills, so that was good. So 2014, I attended my first ISCA. It was my first time on the West Coast, and man, it was definitely life-changing. Every opportunity I've had from caricature is because of the people I met at that convention. So from there, I started working with all sorts of different companies. I went over to Korea and worked with Fun Caricature, and I feel like my style really became what it is now, poppy and cute, because I was very influenced by how cute and colorful my coworkers' styles were. I worked at Caricature in Santa Cruz every summer. I did Comic-Cons and fairs, festivals, private gigs. Whatever opportunity presented itself, I took it. And I used caricature as a way to get better and travel. I worked with Caricature Japan for 9 months, and that was an incredible experience. They're super technically skilled, so I feel like my color really tightened up while I was there. So after a decade of being in this community, I've got to draw with over 16 companies all around the world. I've got to go to places I never thought I'd be able to go. But most importantly, I've got to work with hundreds of amazing artists. That changed the way I think, the way I draw, and definitely the way I color. And I'm just super grateful for all the opportunities this community has given me. But all good things must come to an end. I got really burnt out last year. So I'm trying to take the skills that I've learned doing this and applying them to different places. You're gonna hire me one of these days. So since kind of semi-retiring from caricature, I've been working on comics. I've been doing a lot of murals that I'm really excited about. Life's just changed so much, and now I'm working on a bus to convert into kind of an RV and hopefully travel across the country and do more murals and maybe learn how to tattoo from someone in the community. I don't know. Let me know. And I'm really excited to see what the future holds. Woo! So my hope is that everyone feels more confident and inspired, and hopefully you'll take something from this. So let's quickly talk about supplies. You can use watercolor, digital, this can apply for everything, but I'll just explain what I use. That works really well for me. I just use regular old copy paper buffered by this foam backing you can get at any art supply store for like $1. It just makes everything go a lot smoother. I usually like to work maybe just one paper in between the foam and what paper I'm using to draw with. And I use Caricature wax pastels, the non-water soluble kind. If it's really hot weather, they start to melt pretty quick, so that's something to think about. First, we're going to start with the basics, the non-negotiables. For me, that's value. Get your paper out, and we're going to make 10 boxes, 1 through 10. 10 is, there is nothing left on the paper, it's just totally colored in. 1 is the paper's blank, and we're just gonna get comfortable with our supplies and do that. It's very important to hit them with the 10. Have a lot of 10s in your caricatures. We build dimension through value, so it's important to hit them with 1s and 10s and get a lot of good contrast in there. Our next exercise on the basics is to do a monochromatic drawing. So we'll just draw this lovely lady together. No need to exaggerate or even worry about likeness. We just want to feel really comfortable with our supplies, make sure we can go from 1 to 10, be able to do, good contrast, and just feel comfortable. And just real quick about our mark making, we want to be able to do really broad strokes with that side and also be able to do really tiny strokes with the tip of the stick. And yeah, so we can make hair by doing broad strokes, and then some lines, or broad strokes with some curly texture, and that makes some nice hair. And we can use our color to create texture for beards, freckles, fur. So for me, there's 2 types of coloring. There's coloring representationally, so coloring what you see, and there's coloring from your mind palace. And for me, caricature is inherently both. For example, this is pretty much representational color because the lighting is coming from the left side of the face, but at the same time I still have to use mind palace color because we don't want to spend all our time coloring half his face in shadow. And when you exaggerate the features, you have to exaggerate where the shadow is going to fall. When you make a really big nose, for example, you're gonna have to make a really big shadow. If we're drawing in lighting that's not very good, we can imagine where the shadows are gonna hit with those features, or if we want to do like a cool effect, in our caricature where we have different lighting, it's just good to know that. Pro tip, it's good to memorize where lighting hits the face, from the top, from behind, from left to right, from underneath, so you can quickly and efficiently color in no matter what weird lighting you're drawing in. And faces are just made up of shapes, circles, squares, so if you memorize how light hits different shapes, a sphere for example, you'll be able to color in cheeks, foreheads, chins, noses, everything. So let's move on to color theory and color choices. I think it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the color wheel and color theories. Knowing harmonious color combos is a great way to create quick color compositions that grab the eye. The human brain rejects what it can't understand, and sometimes when you're out there just grabbing whatever colors willy-nilly, you run the risk of creating something that's a headache to look at, or worse, something that's boring. That being said, there's nothing like going out there and experimenting and finding what works for you and creating your own unique coloring style. A good exercise to test your colors and see what combinations you like is to create some spheres or shapes and just go to town. So whether we like it or not, color holds meaning. So if someone is bright and cheerful, maybe we'll give them a yellow background. If someone is sad, maybe blue, or serious, something like that. Maybe red for evil. Or we can choose colors ironically. So just as we exaggerate features, we can exaggerate color. So if someone is very pink, we can make them more pink. If they have a warm skin tone, we can exaggerate that. If we have two people in the same drawing, maybe we can push their contrast. Color adds likeness, so don't miss the opportunity to exaggerate skin tone or push the opposites of two people. You know, even if they're siblings, they can have drastically different skin tones. So just be mindful and have fun. So I think this is a really good example of an epic fail. I drew this in 2016 and it could have had the potential to be an okay caricature, but because I totally missed the guy on the right's value completely and made him and his boyfriend almost the same skin tone, it really lost a lot of likeness. So let's move on to an exercise where we try to capture the right skin tone. Again, feel free to pause and let's not worry about too much about likeness or making a good drawing. This is all about just trying to capture some skin tone. I chose this lady because it's the same chick. She's just super good at makeup, so it's a great example of different skin tones, but they're kind of the same value. So it's a good example to pick up on some subtleties and maybe exaggerate what colors you see. I start with the shadows and the darker values first because I think it mixes better when you go over with lighter colors, and it's easier to get that contrast and value from the get-go rather than going in and fussing about it later. So she's got really pink and shiny cheeks, so let's focus on that. So yeah, we, hit the shadows again, start dark and work our way up from there. Instead of using pink, let's use peach. And we don't have to outline everything with a black marker. We can use color sticks and create like a softer effect. It's a good exercise to do every once in a while, is to not use a marker at all and just use your value, use your color sticks, or whatever you're using. So maybe hit it with the little pink at the end. That's only 3 colors on the right, 3 colors on the left for the skin tone. And we can exaggerate it. We can push that further if we want to. And we'll do a medium skin tone next. Again, like whatever drawing is fine. Just don't sweat it. We're just gonna focus on the skin tones. And maybe at the end, adding some goldenrod in there. Hey, can you not? And we'll do a darker skin tone next. When I reached out to a lot of caricature artists about what they would want to see from this video, most of them said dark skin tones is what they struggle with. And I think that's just because people have a hard time getting those 10s and hitting those values. So my advice would just be, you know, don't be afraid to push hard. Don't be afraid to bust through the paper.
Here's Johnny!
And start with your darkest first. Start with the dark brown and then work your way up. Some skin tones, they don't need sienna brown, they just need dark brown. I think she needs some sienna brown and maybe some golden brown at the end, so we'll do that.
What a fine day for
Color! So I know we've already talked about experimenting with color a little bit, but I want to expand on it just a little bit further because a lot of my favorite colorists in the caricature world use colored markers in their work, and I found it to be super fun. And it's just, I mean, caricature can be a really good time if you want it to be. It can really make things look more like a filter than your typical black marker colored in sort of style. So here are my tips when you are trying to get faster at color. Work smarter, not harder. Use big, broad strokes. The more simplified your drawing, the less details you need to color. When you finish with a color, don't pick it up again. Do all your browns and all your pinks, all your blues, whatever. We don't want to keep grabbing the same color and going back and forth multiple times because it's a big time waster. Alternatively, instead of doing shadows, skin tone, whatever, we can just do skin tone on the parts where the sun will hit. So instead of wasting time and doing shadows, we could do that. And simplify your background. Just a couple lines will do the trick if you're short on time. I mean, it's also fun to do a really cool background and make the characters pop off the page, but if you're in a crunch, a couple lines is all you need. So first tip, I would recommend getting this whiteout pen. It's really great, it's fun to use. You can really make your caricatures like pop off the page if you have some time after. Highlight stuff, you know, the deal. And my last piece of unsolicited advice is 99% of the time, the customer doesn't care about the drawing. Usually they are really visually illiterate and it's really just about your attitude. Just have fun with it. But you know, getting really good at this is kind of just for you and your peers. It's not really for the customer. Of course you want to give them a good drawing, but most of the time they don't know what's good and bad. It's all about your attitude and what you put into it. So just go for it, have a lot of fun, take pictures of your work, always. I have drawn thousands and thousands of horrible, horrendous, god-awful caricatures, and I really wish I took pictures of more of them. Okay, lastly, I'm going to talk about digital caricatures. I use the Procreate app for the iPad for live, studio work, and commissions. Here's my 3 favorite brushes. This one's called Syrup. It comes with the app and I use for filling in shapes. This one is my absolute favorite. It's called the Ultimate Brush. It doesn't come with Procreate and I have no idea where I got it. I'm so sorry. And this one is the drawing brush and it comes with the app and I use it for inking. So there's 3 ways that I approach digital caricatures. The first one is the easiest in my opinion and it's kind of takes the longest. It's doing it like you would do a painting. So you work all on one layer, starting with the darks and working your way up. I use the Ultimate Brush almost the entire time. I like doing this method for studio work and higher paying commissions because I think it looks a lot better and more, I don't know, finer.
Verbally, that is making love to the music means vibing to the beat at night with the whole
The second way is making a black and white drawing and then adding a multiply layer for the color, or just putting the color underneath that black and white drawing layer. I don't use this method too often, but it's fun to do every once in a while. It's kind of like glazing if you were painting. So the third way that I approach it is what I use for most of my commissions, and also for my side business, which is drawing digital pet caricatures online. So I learned this approach from Sheeting's Instagram posts from a couple years back, and I'm just gonna use this drawing that I did for a customer online as an example. But I start with the undersketch, I ink it with the dry ink brush, I fill it in with a color, and then over top on a multiply layer I paint where the shadows are, and then I do a overlay layer on the top for lighting and erase where the shadows are from that layer, and just add a bunch of other stuff and mess around with the background always, and yeah, just try different things. And here you can see that base layer where all the colors are, and on top of those they're all clipping masks, so they only hit that layer. There is the multiply layer for the shadows, and on top of that is an overlay layer that just adds like some light is coming down. You could also put an add layer, and with a light color it could be like you know, like a super light highlight that's like hitting the dog's face. Just something to think about. And here's another example of using the add layer to make some light. And when I'm drawing a commission with multiple people, each subject has their own base layer with a bunch of clipping masks for other colors on top. And I love using that multiplied layer for shadow. And for art other than caricature too, I always have that base layer, then the multiply layer, and yeah, another multiply layer, and then an add layer for that lighting. Since the pandemic, I've been super fortunate to do a couple online live caricature gigs with big head cartoons. And I just use the same method as before, but simplified: one layer for inking, one layer for that base color, and one layer on top of that as a multiply layer for shadows. It just takes time and practice, remembering what we talked about earlier, values, and definitely experimenting and trying different brushes and layers, and just having a lot of fun with it. One more thing, if you are a woman watching this, I highly recommend joining the Women of Caricature Facebook group. If you need support, critiques, just to make new friends, I highly recommend it, because you know, ask and you shall receive. This community gave me a lot of opportunities. I can for you too, so don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll see you guys around. And if you'd like to follow my art accounts on Instagram at KO Makes, and another one for my pet caricatures, it's at pupped.up. Give me my marker! Give me my marker.